according to The Guardian, the COVID-19 lockdown has led to a deadly snake boom in Melbourne. People are home, they're not out and about, and they're seeing more snakes. And perhaps a shock for New Zealand audiences, at least for me, these snakes can be deadly. In fact, they're some of the world's most venomous, and they can be lurking anywhere in very ordinary places. With us is Mark Pelley, a registered Melbourne snake hunter. G'day, Mark. Welcome to Radio New Zealand.
Good afternoon. How are you today?
I'm very well. Look, so have you been busy snake catching?
Yes, I am, and I'm about to get a lot more busier. So every day I go out and catch the world's most venomous snakes in people's homes and people's backyards. And with the COVID-19 lockdown, people are actually home, so they're actually coming across snakes a lot more often. Part of living in Australia.
Yeah. So what sort of snakes are we talking about here?
So the most common snakes that you find here in Melbourne are the eastern tiger snake, which is the fifth most venomous snake in the world, and it can grow up to about 2.5 meters long. And also we have the eastern brown snake, which is the second most venomous snake in the world, and they grow up to about 1.5 to 2 meters at full length as well. They're also very quick and very hard to deal with. They're the most common snakes we have in Melbourne, but we've also got the red-bellied black snake occasionally and something called a lowland copperhead, all of which are venomous. Every snake in Melbourne is actually venomous.
So this is not out in the bush, out somewhere in the wilderness. These are in people's homes?
That's correct. So snakes have actually learned to adapt really well to the urbanisation of what was once Australian bushland. So once upon a time, you might have 1 or 2 big snakes in a very big area because there's limited food supply. Since Australia's built a lot of houses, then when you have people living in those houses, with people you have rubbish, with rubbish you have mice, and then you've got an abundant food supply for snakes. So snakes literally crawl through people's backyards every single day. Most people don't know about it, but now because people are home, they can actually see them.
Now, describe to me a typical scenario. You get a phone call. What might be a scenario B that you've worked on recently? You get a phone call about a snake.
Sure. So an example recently, a lady called me up. She went to go outside because in Melbourne, we're allowed to go out for 1 hour of exercise a day with the COVID lockdown. She went to go outside for the exercise, opened up her front door, and there was a snake just outside her front door on the footpath looking at her. She promptly closed the front door and called me straight away. I showed up. There was a lowland copperhead. I picked it up and put it away. And that's just an example of how I'd go to catch a snake. Another example is there was someone just recently who was in a place called Heidelberg, which is in pretty much the northern areas of Melbourne. He came home and he heard a strange noise behind his washing machine. Got a torch, looked underneath, thought it was a mouse, and turned out to be a snake hiding behind his washing machine. So I had to go there, pull the washing machine out, and get the tiger snake for him.
Oh, no, thank you. Mark, if that tiger snake happens to bite you, what would happen?
So, thank God these days we've got fantastic medical treatment. And in Australia, we're one of the world leaders in terms of treating snake bites, and for good reason as well. So if you get bitten by an eastern tiger snake, being the fifth most deadly snake, it has very powerful toxins. So it's got neurotoxins, which affect your brain and your nervous system, myotoxins, which destroy your blood, your muscles. It's got hemolysis, which destroy your red blood cells, and it's got toxins that affect the way your blood clots and coagulates. And all these work together at the same time. So a typical adult bitten by a tiger snake without treatment can die in as little as half an hour. But these days, we know what to do with snakes and snake bites, so usually most people survive.
Nikki, a reason to stay in New Zealand?
Oh my goodness! I know Aussies are quite blasé about snakes, but if I found a snake behind my washing machine, I think I would have to move house. I don't know what I would do. Honestly, how quickly can you get there, Mark? Like if someone finds a snake, how quickly can you rock up and get rid of the snake?
So there's a few snake catchers in Melbourne. Apparently, for some reason, there's not that many of us. But if someone gets a snake in their house, we get the closest snake catcher to attend. So usually it takes me between about 30 seconds if they're next door, up to about 20 minutes to show up to someone's house, give or take Melbourne traffic. These days with the COVID restrictions, there is no traffic, so it's a lot quicker.
I think I have to have you dial on my phone.
Yeah, Phil O'Reilly. What would you do if there was a tiger snake behind your curtain?
Well, I'd run away, Wallace, wouldn't you? I mean, you would, wouldn't you? What are you going to do? Sit down and have a book? Well, I'd be more concerned about my pets, actually. There must be, I've got 2 little Dachshunds and they're pretty interested in snuffling around the bush. I mean, just for our snake catcher, do you find pets get attacked by snakes very often?
Unfortunately, that's the harsh reality of living in Melbourne. People do not get bitten anywhere near as dogs and cats. And dogs, because they've got a very fantastic nose that can smell really well, they'll smell something in the bushes or they'll hear something, they'll crawl up and they'll investigate. They'll try to smell what's going on. A snake will bite them on the nose. The dog then attacks the snake. And the owner might come home from work several hours later and unfortunately find both animals deceased on the ground.
Oh.
So it's really sad reality, and thousands of dogs are bitten and killed by snakes every year here in Australia. So that's why I actually started teaching dogs to avoid snakes now. So the Dachshunds that you've got, I can actually teach your dogs to avoid snakes, and that's something that I do.
Could they avoid Australians as well?
Ha, that was a joke. That was a joke.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a New Zealand joke. Hey, thanks, Phil. Hey, Tex here, what do you do with the snakes?
What I'll do with them?
Yeah.
So once I capture the snake, I make sure that it's all healthy and happy, and usually the owner wants to get photos of me holding the snake, then I put it away. Make sure it's healthy and happy, and then they get released safely back into the wild as far away from people as possible. But there's a major problem here. The Department of Environment in Victoria requires that I release snakes within a 5-kilometre radius of where I find them. So let's say hypothetically I find the snake in the middle of the CBD. It means I've got to release it in suburban Melbourne by law.
Really?
Oh, this is just getting worse.
Hey, now, just finally, last year, Mark, I guess you could call a fellow tiger, a tiger snake in Melbourne swung his head around and bit a fellow snake catcher under the armpit. He said it didn't even feel like a bite, but the effects came on 4 or 5 minutes, and they were so severe that he was calling his wife to say goodbye. He actually thought he would die. In your years of snake catching, have you had any close calls?
I've never had a close call with a snake bite just yet, and that doesn't mean that the gentleman you're referring to, I know the snake catcher, he was in Ararat. He's a fantastic snake catcher, and it's just one of those things that you just can't help sometimes. The snake he caught was just enormous, and he did not think that it could actually bite him due to its size, but it did. But I've never had a close call with a snake just yet. I've never been bitten yet, but it's almost guaranteed with the job that I do. At some point, that something like that will happen.
Oh, goodness gracious me. No, thank you, Mark. But anyway, thank you for being with us and enlightening our New Zealand audience. That's registered Melbourne snake hunter Mark Pelley. Someone says, when living in New South Wales, Australia, we could always tell new people because often they would come screaming from the other toilet as after sitting down they would realise our lovely carpet python used to like living clipped around the base of their porcelain toilet base. Yes, I think I might stay here. I don't know. How about you?